Hello everyone. If you watched my video, my Around the Farm video that I posted a couple days ago, I told you that I was going to do a quick how-to video on some electrical diagnostics. And so I got the bike out again here, working on it, and I found out that my solenoid here is actually what was bad. The shop that I took it to, he bought a new one, and I had him buy one of the cheap ones, and I've had this problem before where I buy one of the cheap ones and it's not the right thing. And I don't know if this one was just no good or if it wasn't the right thing, but if you look, I don't know if you'll be able to see this on the camera, but there's a B and an M on there, and there's an M and a B on this one. And I think that, and then don't quote me on this, I'm just guessing, but I think that B probably means battery and M probably means starter motor. And anyways, they're opposite. I don't know if that made the difference or not, or if this one is just junk. But before, the only way I could get my starter to turn is if this connector right here, which is for the headlights, the dash, everything on this part of the bike, if I unhooked that, was the only way that I could get the bike to start. Then at that point, it wasn't communicating with the starter saying, hey, the bike has started, you can shut off now. So the starter was sticking on. And so I believe my issue is fixed here. I do still have voltage draw, and I basically am not going to worry about it for now. If I start having problems with my battery dying, then there's obviously a bigger issue that I need to find. When I checked my voltage draw before, it was related to this plug right here. When I unplugged this plug, my voltage draw went way down. Now today, when I first hooked it up, this plug wasn't plugged in, and I still had a voltage draw. So that tells me that the culprit is not anywhere up front here like I originally thought it was, but it could be in a wire somewhere in this harness, wherever this harness goes to, wherever those wires hook up. It could be a bad wire in there somewhere, or any number of things. The one thing that I did notice is that the drop increased when I turned the key switch on. And so that would tell me that it's something that has to do with the key switch, something that's not given power until the key switch is on. So it could be a faulty key switch, would be a very possible thing. Other than that, it's somewhere after the key switch, or I don't think it would be affected by that key switch turning on. So anyways, I'm still going to show you how to check this quick. And like I said, it's super, super simple. And you can do this on a car, motorcycle, anything that's got a battery on it. I learned how to do it on a tractor. And I apologize here if the wind noise is louder than I think it is. But so what you're going to do is make sure your key is off and unhook the ground cable from your battery. And I'm going to lose the little nut in here. I do every time. Yep, there it goes. Thankfully on this bike, you can pull the battery out, and this nice little plastic tray down here likes to catch that nut for me. Somebody actually knew what they were doing when they engineered this thing. I don't say that very often when I'm working on equipment. But that's the way it goes, you know. Those of us that work on things think the engineers don't have a clue what they're doing, and most of the engineers have never worked on things. They just say, hey, it makes sense on a computer to do it this way. And, you know, I guess that's their job. And there's guys whose job it is to tell the engineers, hey, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. And then they get to fight it out. And in the end, I'm guessing the engineer usually wins because they probably want to do it cheaper. But cheaper and smaller and faster and whatever else. But anyways, so what we're going to do next is, now that our ground is unhooked, we're going to come over here and grab our multimeter. And as I said in the other video, you can do this with a test light too, no problem. There's absolutely no reason you can't do it with a test light. I just like to use a multimeter because then I got the actual numbers. So what you want to do then is you just want to put one lead on the battery and one lead on your ground cable. Now, I don't know, I studied the wiring diagram for this bike a whole bunch, and I might be missing something. I really don't know. But it is possible that for some reason there would be power going through when the switch is off, but I wouldn't think there should be. And so the voltage you're seeing right now means that somehow, some way, power is getting from right here. This is the positive side of the solenoid. That's always going to have power. There's nothing between the battery and right there. That means that somehow power is getting from right here through these wires to the frame. and it's not through the starter wire, because if I unhook this, it's still there, so it's not the starter. So then right there we can narrow the starter out. So then somewhere, one of the components that's powered by these wires, which is everything on the bike that runs off of the battery, so really don't help us a whole lot. In fact, the charging system even comes in right here, so it could even be something with the charging system. But which that would be something that you would want to check on a vehicle. If you're having this problem, unplug the alternator wires, and if this goes away, then you know your alternator is shorted out. That's a very common problem on a lot of vehicles, is your alternator will short out. And so if you unplug the wires from the alternator and this number goes to 0, or if you're using a test light, if your test light turns off, then you found the problem. You put a new alternator on it and you shouldn't have a problem anymore. It's a little bit different with a bike because you don't have an alternator on it. You've got a rotor and a stator and all that great stuff that's buried deep inside the engine, and I really don't want to have to change that. But that would be a definite possibility as to what's causing the problem. I would have to figure out which one of these wires it is and trace it back to where it plugs into the bike, and that would tell me. Now, what I did next was came back here, and I also, actually, I guess I did it up here too as well. Every single connector that I could find on the bike, I unplugged. Now, what that should do is that should eliminate from that connector forward. So, for example, this one right here, I believe, is for the push button. When you push the button to start the bike. And I think it does a few other things. I think it runs the kill switch and everything too. But when I unplug this one, I should be able to eliminate the kill switch and the starter button because there's no longer power going to those components. That means that I can eliminate the plug right here, the wires, and those components. However, that doesn't mean that I can eliminate anything from here back to here. So there could still be a pinched wire, a broken wire, anything from here to here. All that does is tell me that the component is okay. And so I would imagine somewhere in this mess of wires, one of those plugs goes to my charging system, but I would have to look at it, figure it out, and I probably will before I throw it all back together. So it's really easy to eliminate. One thing that I did to help make this a little easier is as I went through them, I just took a paint marker and I put a dash on every one that I had checked so that I wasn't checking a whole bunch of them a whole bunch of times because I wasn't paying attention. And so that's where you would go next. As I was saying, this will work on anything, from a tractor to an RV to a car to anything that's got a battery on it. And so if you just go along the lines, if you think of on a car or a tractor, your typical problem areas are going to be starter. So unhook the starter. If you've still got that number, it's something else. Your alternator is going to be a typical problem area. It could be a bad fuse that somehow shorted out. Any electrical component that can short out could cause this problem. Now, it is important to remember that everything has a ground. And so if you have, say you're working on your car and you can't figure out why you have a power draw, if your door is open and your dome light is on, that dome light, after it gets the power from your battery, goes to a ground and returns back to the battery. So if your dome light is on, you're going to see a number here. So it's really important to shut everything off if you're going to do this. For example, if I left my lights on the bike and I did this, I would probably see 12 volts there or whatever the battery has because it's completing that circuit through the lights and coming back, and the way it's making its ground back to the battery is through my voltmeter. And so it's important to make sure that you have everything shut off that you need to shut off before you do this, or it's going to be a tough time. The first time I did a tractor this way, I had the same problem. I looked and unplugged a bunch of stuff, and I found out that the reason the light was still on was because of the door was open and it had a dome light. And so it's an easy mistake to make, and everybody seems to make it, so it's not a big deal, but just something to keep your eye out on. But I'm going to chase this just a little bit more. Otherwise, it is starting now with the different solenoid in it. And so I'm going to chase it a little bit more, see if I can't find what's going on. And if I can't find anything, I'm going to put it back together. Thankfully, from this point forward, as long as it's nothing in the front of the bike, which I can't see that it is, I should, knock on wood if I could find any, I should only need to take the gas tank off if I have more problems. Now, with my luck, that's probably not going to be the case, but hopefully that's all I got to do. But if I find anything, I'll let you guys know. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Please leave a like, share, and subscribe.